Thank you, Andrew. Okay. A year ago, we presented a forecast here in the June seminar. And what we said then is we said housing starts were going to increase. We said home prices were going to rise. We said existing home sales were going to increase. We said rents were going to increase. And we said we were going to have a multifamily housing boom. We have the same forecast. The only difference is this time is we're going out to 2015 instead of going out to 2014. But it pretty much played out the way we had it last year. So like I would say like a stop clock. We get it right every now and then. I think we're in a very sustainable housing recovery. Starts, prices, sales, and rents, all the indicators you see are all positive, and we think they will stay that way. Overall, starts are returning to normal, and I'll go into that in a minute, while multifamily housing is in a boom phase and will continue to boom. We're underpinned by strong job growth, household formations, growing household formations, and low interest rates. And if we have a negative out there, the one negative we worry about, especially the ownership market, is student loan debt, which is high and getting higher, which will keep people out of the housing market. So if there's a blockage out there, it's going to come from student loan debt on the ownership side. This is the long-term chart on housing starts in America going back to 1959. So we have the average from 1959 to 2012, over 50 years of data. And the average for that time period was 1.47 million units. Okay. Typically, a recession was we'd bottom at 1 million. This time we had a depression. We bottomed at 500,000. We're moving right now from a depression level to a recession level. So housing starts right now, as much as they've recovered, they've sort of roughly doubled off the bottom. If you would have said 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago, 1 million housing starts, recession. Well, we're at a recession level right now. So our forecast of getting back to somewhere a little bit over 1.5 million in 2015, all we're really saying is we're going back to normal, the 50-year average. In 1960, the United States had 180 million people. Now we have 315 million people, to give you a flavor. So you could make an argument is 1.5 million is kind of low because this is the 50-year average with a growing population and higher income over the entire period. So our forecast is this year we're going to have about 1,030,000 starts. Last year was 780. Next year around 1,350,000. The year after that 1,550,000. Now a year ago we were viewed as being very high, maybe a little crazy with our forecast on starts. Now we have company, and we're sort of like in the optimistic area. We have company, we're sort of a high end of consensus. We're about a little bit above consensus for this year, not a lot. For next year and the year after, about 150,000 above consensus. And where Wall Street consensus is they have hitting 1.5 million housing starts. They have it in 2016. We have it in 2015. So we're a year ahead of consensus, but we're more upbeat. But we're no longer in the crazy category as far as forecast sitting out there as an outlier. We're just viewed as on the high side of a normal range of forecasts. So just remember that. 1.47 million is the over 50-year average for housing starts. We're running still right now under 1 million, so it's easy to make an argument to go to 1.5 million, which is sort of just average for 50 years. Okay, prices are recovering. This is the Case-Shiller index. I know you can see a lot of price indices. You have the Zillow index. This is the Case-Shiller index. Case-Shiller is up 10% from a year ago, and we're just back at 2004 levels. So, this just the beginning to recover. Now, one thing I learned on Wall Street, I only learned one thing on Wall Street, worked on Wall Street a long time. When people look at housing prices are up 20%, wow, we got a real problem. I learned one thing is if you're up 50% and then you're down 50%, you didn't break even. Just remember that. That's the one thing I learned. So we're just up 10% off the bottom, but we're still way off the peak. So when I say Phoenix is 20% off the bottom, Phoenix went down 60%. So if they're up 20%, they're still now 50% off the high right now. So they still got a long way to go. So this is sort of a bounce off the bottom we're seeing in the market. And our sense is Case-Shiller's probably got more room more room to run on this index than they do count foreclosures. And to the extent you have less foreclosures in the system, it'll go up faster. Okay. The other thing where we may be controversial is we think we can get this housing recovery in the face of rising rates. Mortgage rates have gone up in round numbers from 3.5% a month ago to around 4% today, plus or minus in round numbers. We think we're on the road into the fives. Interest rates are going to normalize. But the difference is right over here, credit conditions are very tight. Credit conditions are getting easier. We're not going to go back to fog of mirror and you could get a loan like 2005 and 2006, but down payment requirements are going to be eased. FICO scores are going to be eased, and it'll be easier for people to get loans. You see this in the loan officer surveys. You see higher loan-to-value ratios. And banks are more willing to make conventional loans, and FHA is making loans as well with low down payments. So part of this rise in rates will be offset by somewhat easier terms, not the 2005 and 2006 terms, but easier terms for people to get a house. Okay. Existing home sales are ramping up. We've peaked at 7 million, bottom around 4 million. We're on the road to 5.6, 5.7 million. We'll see more activity, more liquidity in the housing market, but far from the boom of the over 6 million that we had from 2003 to 2007. So, but getting better. All realtors in the audience, the world's going to be more transactions. Good for Zillow, right? More transactions. People go to the website. Underpinned by employment. This is our employment forecast. As Ed noted, we got to go to 2014 to get back to the peak. But employment is rising, and in 2014 and 2015, we have around 200,000 jobs a month that we're going to be generating. In terms of household formations, well, what happened is what really knocked out the housing market, because there's no household formations in 2009. Essentially went to zero, which basically meant my kids, other people's kids ended up at home rather than having their own places. Right now, all my 3 kids are out in their own places right now, so all of a sudden, we went from 1 household to 4 households real quickly, and this all collapsed into zero. We went negative before, and we're assuming like we're already over 1 million, maybe go to 1.5 million. But one of the things this shows you what kind of housing bubble we had in the middle O's is here we were running household formations in a little over 1 million, and we were producing 2 million housing units a year. Now we have 1.5 million housing starts, 1.5 million household formations. It's not exact because you got mobile homes, you got removals, there's all kinds of complicated things, but it's not. It's more. It seems reasonable. That's all I have to say. And here's one of the real issues. This is the student loan debt. We went from 200 billion to $1 trillion. On that, and to me is if anything's going to sort of hold up the home market or delay the ownership market is going to come from people unable to qualify for a loan because they have student loan debt. And if someone has defaulted on a student loan debt, where we have default rates right now in the teens right now for recent graduates, it's going to be very hard to get a loan. Other thing about student loans, they are not extinguishable in bankruptcy in most cases, which means is if some student who defaults on their student loan at age 28, and then 30 years, 40 years later, they go to Social Security. It says if there is Social Security at that time they will be garnished. And the government will garnish Social Security to get back the defaulted student loan debt. It is not extinguishable in bankruptcy. So it's a big deal, and it will clog up the credit system, and it will linger for a while. That's part of the reason why we don't think we get to 2 million starts for a very long time. Okay. The home ownership rate has been falling. We peaked at 69%. We're forecasted to be a little below 65%. The chart says maybe it bottoms at around 64. It's been lower before, but we're beginning to see increased ownership activity, either single family or condominiums. So I think we're about the bottom for the home ownership rate, call it 64, 65%. It's been coming down. And well, the flip side of that is declining home ownership means rising renters, increasing in the rentership rate. So rentership has gone from 31%, that's the flip of 69, to 35%. That's a huge increase when you go from 31% of the households to 35% being renters in 6 or 7 years. That's a huge increase in demand for rental housing. A lot of that is also single-family housing that were defaulted. Wall Street bought up the houses, and people are now renting them. All right, this is apartment vacancies nationwide. We peaked at 8%, now down almost at 4%. That's a signal to every developer, build apartments. There's a shortage. And they are, and they're going to do that. Next thing you see, rents are going up. Another signal to build apartments. This is the official consumer price index for rent. It's at 3%. We think it's understated. And the reason why we think it's understated is rent-controlled jurisdictions are way overweighted. Where normally there's vacancy decontrol, so the rents don't get marked to market right away because of rent control. It takes a while. Survey data and the public REITs are suggesting rents are now rising between 3 and 5% depending on location, not this 2.8% on the index. When the official index was at 0, or back even before it got to 0, when at the end of 2009, beginning of 10, when it was showing about 1.5%, all the surveys and all the REITs were saying rents were dropping. Because the thing is when you have a lot of rent control in the data series, you have a longer lag between an apartment unit gets priced where market is. So our sense is and why we're not so optimistic about inflation going forward is we think this rent component, which is now around 2.8% year over year, is probably going to 3.5%. And if you notice, it was 4.5% in 2001 and 4.5% in 2007. So it's certainly not unprecedented to see rents on the official series going there. By the time the official series gets into the 3s, the 4s, the real market will be below that because we'll have supply coming on. All right, so this is the signal. Multifamily starts, which bottom at around 100,000, we have them going to 400,000 in 14 and 15. Now, there's one other thing going on right now, this cycle, compared to the previous cycles of the past 30 years. Because from about, basically 1975, the year of the modern zoning controls, 1975 to, say, 2005, multifamily high density was bad, anti-environment. We don't want it in the neighborhood. NIMBY, not in my backyard, and no one wanted it. Now, all of a sudden, in certain areas, and especially in close-in urban locations, multifamily is green, environmentally friendly, build more, especially in near transit. So where it used to be impossible to get building permits for multifamily housing, even in the People's Republic of Santa Monica, or even in Culver City, or even in other places, all of a sudden, if you're near transit, zoning is there. And in some places, they're throwing money at you're getting subsidized for zoning, or you're getting density bonuses. In New Jersey, there's anything transit-related development, transit-related housing, where you're next to a transit facility, walking distance to a transit, all of a sudden is you're getting subsidies from the state of New Jersey, from local government to build multifamily. So we think the zoning is gone, zoning constraints are gone, and in fact is where investors thought the best place to be was supply-constrained markets, quote, because you couldn't build. Where we're seeing the biggest increase in apartment construction right now is in the most supply-constrained markets in the country. Call them Los Angeles, call them Washington, D.C., call them Boston, call them New York, and call them Los Angeles. So we think there's a boom coming, and there's lots of pension money there. They're always late. Ultimately, they're going to go in like they did in 07, 06, 07, 08, where CalPERS lost a lot of money. They're going to lose, trust me, they will lose a lot of money next time in multifamily. But for next year, in the ground today probably will work. In the ground, if you had a project in the ground today, will probably work. In the ground in beginning of 2015 might not work at that stage. So to conclude is we're recovering from depression to recession to normal. We're going to be in a multifamily boom. We're in a multifamily boom. And where we're going to be controversial here is we think we could absorb the higher rates. But the thing is it's sort of a chicken and egg. If we get 1.5 million starts, rates are going to be higher. All right? If rates stay low, we probably won't have it's the 1.5 million starts that's going to increase interest rates because you're going to have more demand in the economy, and the economy is going to be in better shape. So if you want to be a bear on housing, you got to, and let's say rates are going to stay low. My argument is we're not going to get 200,000 jobs, and we've got much bigger problems in the economy than mortgage rates in the middle fives. So let me turn it over to Steve. Thank you very much.